everyone, this is Tamara, your host, and you can find my blog at shelfaddiction.com. If you're new here, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. This is episode 172. Tonight on Book Chat, I'm sharing with you some of my favorite fiction books by African American authors, as well as a few books that I'm looking forward to this year. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like and share it. Show your support by rating the podcast and leaving a positive review on Apple Podcast or your listening app of choice. If you'd like to comment on something you've heard during today's episode, you can find me on Twitter at Shelf Addiction. If you'd like to email in feedback or questions, feel free to reach out to me at info@shelfaddiction.com or call in and leave an internet voice message via SpeakPipe or the Anchor app. The links are below in the show notes. All right, so everyone knows February is Black History Month. So let's honor some amazing Black authors, Tamara style. What does that mean? It means that while classics are amazing, that's not what I'm going to be sharing with you today. I want to recognize authors publishing today or in recent history with great books. From contemporary romance to my favorite genre, fantasy, there's something for everyone. Reading diverse books is so important, and I'm happy to share with you some amazing books. If you find yourself needing a little bit more time to read one of these awesome books, be sure to check out my podcast on 5 easy ways to read more books. I have lots of ways for you to squeeze in one more book, and of course, you can always grab an audiobook. I think that listening to audiobooks is a healthy part of any reading diet. Consuming literature in any way possible is what's most important. Before we get going, these are just books that I really enjoy in any particular order. So one is not better than the other. They're not in any kind of number 1 through 7 order. I love them all equally. So let's jump into this list. Okay, let's start with an urban fantasy title. Now, this book is a series. It's the first, and I believe it's 13 books. I'm probably wrong there, but it's a long-running series. And that book is Minion by L.A. Banks, and that series is called the Vampire Huntress series. This book kicked off my fantasy addiction back in 2009. I can't say enough about how I feel this nostalgia every time I think of this series. From a multicultural cast, including a Black leading lady, there's so much to love. Banks is able to weave a complex story with a lot of characters in a way that is seamless. She's able to add a different twist onto the vampire legend, but not making it too preachy, because, she likes to incorporate a little bit of religion in her, mythology, but she keeps it from being too overabundant and just weighing the story down. So definitely, if you're looking for a different take on vampires, this would be a great choice. And this is kind of what my quote unquote gateway drug is in the urban fantasy genre. So after I consumed this series, I wanted more and more and more, and I hope that you'll enjoy it as much as I did. The next book is a contemporary gay romance, and that is a series as well. If you've been a listener to the Shelf Addiction podcast, you'll know that I love series. So, of course, Invisible Life by Elin Harris kicks off, I believe, a 6-book series. This is another 2009 throwback. This series hooked me in from book 1. You have Basil Henderson, a very tough to like kind of guy, but yet he's very interesting and multi-layered. And so you have him. He has a girlfriend, and we go through his life as he starts to change, okay? I guess Basil is living an invisible life. And if you're not familiar with gay fiction or you haven't read it in the past, I actually think that this is a great starter point. A lot of my colleagues that love contemporary gay romance, they read things that are a lot more, what's the word I want to use? A lot more aggressive, I don't know, than this. I mean, this is absolutely amazing. It's like packed full of drama, relationship issues. I mean, there's a lot of He said, she said, you don't know what's going on. People playing games with each other. It is really just packed full of drama. And that makes it fun to read. And that makes the characters interesting. And Elin Harris did a great job bringing this world to life. So next up is a newer release. I have a young adult contemporary fiction title. It came out in 2017, The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. That was a favorite last year. It won many literary awards, including Goodreads Reader's Choice Awards. I am looking forward to this book to movie adaptation. You guys know I love a great adaptation. And this story was a hard story to read, but it needed to be told. It's about a young girl who sees her friend shot in front of her, and he was unarmed and he was shot by the police. You know, again, this is a very difficult story, but it was told with such grace and class, and everyone loved it. Almost everyone that touched this book loved it. And the reviews reflect that. So Angie Thomas did a phenomenal job bringing these characters off the page. And I definitely recommend this for book club, especially. This is a great book club read, especially since it's a standalone title. It will open up all kind of fabulous conversation, and I think most of the group will enjoy it. Next up, I have a contemporary fiction read for adults, and this is called Stand Your Ground by Victoria Christopher Murray. This is a 2016 release, and I read this book for one of my book clubs, and I was glad that it was selected as a book to read. Now, this also has a similar theme as far as, race relations, but it's told in a much different way. This is told from an adult point of view, not a child's point of view. And it's pretty much about the mother of someone who is shot and killed, and how you stand your ground in a way that gets you what you want as far as recognizing what the problem is and how to move forward, right? This is a very, very serious book. And it did have a lot of room for discussion, but even though it was a serious book, it wasn't so serious that you felt like overwhelmed by it. You know what I mean? It's like one of these books where it's just shocking. You're reading this and you can't believe what you're reading. You can't believe these things are happening. But, it is in this fiction world. And again, this is another complicated, difficult topic, but Victoria Christopher Murray does a great job tackling it. And I thoroughly enjoyed the book. And I believe my book club did too. I recall when we had this meeting, and I mean, there was some criticism, obviously. This subject is touchy for some, but I felt like it was well delivered. And definitely if you're looking for something like The Hate You Give, but from an adult perspective, Stand Your Ground is a great choice. Now we're going to switch gears and go into horror/fantasy. And way back in 2016, we have Joplin's Ghost by Tananarive Due. I know I said that name wrong. Tananarive Due. I'll spell the name, guys. It's Tananarive. So I'm going to say it's Tananarive. I could be wrong. I apologize if it's incorrect. I know one of you will correct me if I'm saying it wrong. But anyway, I really enjoyed this story. This was another book club read that we read several years ago, and it had great conversation. So this wasn't like a horror in the traditional way. So it's kind of fantasy because it's about ghost, obviously Joplin's ghost, and it's horror because, it's a ghost that's doing things to people over a long period of time. This ghost, we get to go back into history and kind of see what happened back in the day, and then how this ghost is wreaking havoc today, or in 2006 rather. So, reality right now, what's happening? Why is this ghost here? What is it doing? Is it possessing people? Is it Joplin's ghost? What is going on? I found this book utterly unique, and it's not something like anything else I've ever read before. So if you like ghost stories, if you like New Orleans and you like music, then definitely check out Joplin's Ghost. So I kind of had some serious themes going on. You were crossing into something a little scary, but let's take a break from that and return to some contemporary fiction, young adult style. And this is Everything by Nicola Yoon. This was another fan favorite, but this was back in 2015, and Everything had a movie adaptation that was phenomenal. The book is always better, don't get it twisted, but the movie adaptation did a great job. Everything is about a young girl who has a disease that prevents her from leaving her home. She has an immune system that is very, very weak, and leaving her, isolation of her home that is very clean and sterile could cause death. So she meets this boy. He moves in next door, and before you know it, they're making googly eyes at each other through the glass, and all these fun things are happening, and this is her first interaction with a guy she likes, and it's a really fun, coming of age story with a very shocking twist. If you haven't seen the movie, you haven't read the book, I am not going to spoil this for you because it is a twist, a big one. Actually, there's two pretty significant twists in this book. So while it definitely has that young adult, angsty kind of feel to it, there's some meat here. And the story has some really serious things going on as well. And I just loved it. It was phenomenal. And I will definitely be reading more by Nicola Yoon. And I encourage you to check it out. Okay, so the last one from the past is an absolute horror story. And I love this because there are not that many Black authors that write horror. But when I come across it, I must read it. And this is Dark Corner by Brandon Macy. He is the award-winning author of Thunderland. And this is a honestly terrifying novel about a small town that is overtaken by evil. And, one guy that's going to fight the darkness, get the evil out, and save the town. So I read this a long time ago. I believe it was early 2000s. And in that time, I have read several books by Brandon Macy because I was on this horror binge and I just wanted to read book after book after book. And I just had such a great time with Thunderland and Dark Corner. I kept reading more and more by him. And I definitely see what the appeal is. If you are a straight up horror fan, you don't want to miss Dark Corner by Brandon Macy. This will open your eyes to a whole new kind of horror. Okay, so I do have an 8th book, and it's an honorable mention, really. It's an honorable mention because the book is not written by a Black author, but it tells the story of a Black woman and her family. And that is The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks by Rebecca Skloot. Now, this also, they did an HBO movie with Oprah Winfrey that was just phenomenal. This book tells the story of Henrietta Lacks. If you don't know who she is, look up HeLa Cells and you will know who she is. This is a biography. So Rebecca Skloot, when she did some digging and investigating, and she worked with the family of Henrietta Lacks to kind of uncover what happened to her. This story is something that is really hard to read. It really is at times. And I gotta say, it's a lot of science in here. So if you're not into that, I definitely recommend checking this out on audiobook. Audiobook was a great way to digest this book. But there's so much going on. It really makes you think about the state of what medicine was back in the early days when, Blacks weren't treated like everyone else. They didn't have rights as far as their body, their cells, it's horrible. But it's such an important story because HeLa cells are used today. HeLa cells saved all of us, with vaccines. They've used those cells because they're immortal and they never die. So doctors use those cells and they find ways to create vaccines and cures and things like that. So this is a very important story and I can't say enough about it. So because of who the story is about, that is how it earned an honorable mention on this episode. All right, so now that we've gotten those out of the way, I have some new releases coming this year by Black authors that I'm definitely looking forward to. First up is The Bells by Donnell Clayton. Now, this came out actually, I believe it was earlier this week or last week. It was very recent. I can't remember the date right now, but it's out right now. Go get it. And this is about a girl, Camilla, who is a belle, and she lives in New Orleans. And who doesn't love New Orleans? So they are revered. They control beauty, and beauty is a commodity in this world. So obviously this is fantasy, young adult fantasy. But it's not enough for her to be a belle. She wants to be the favorite. She wants to be the one chosen by the queen to live in the royal palace and to give beauty to the royal family and the court. But of course, it never goes exactly how you see it. So this is something that I'm definitely going to be getting right away. Probably next week, I'm going to be downloading this and checking it out for myself. The early reviews have been wonderful, and it just looks like a winner. So the next book is The Children of Blood and Bone. It is the first book in the legacy of Orsha by Tomi Adeyemi. I'm going to pronounce her name again, Adeyemi. Adeyemi. Again, another name that I'm sure I slaughtered, but definitely look her up. This is another YA fantasy. You guys know I love me some fantasy, and it is all about magic. So this young girl remembers when the soil of her home, Orisha, hummed with magic. Burners ignited flames, tiders beckoned waves, and her reaper mother summoned forth souls. So it's a lot of magic going on, and then something happened and all the magic disappeared. So I guess, just based on this synopsis, our young heroine is going to set out to bring magic back to her land and strike out against the monarchy that helped bring down and dissipate the magic. So this is definitely different. I think this is going to be heavy on world building, which is, always refreshing. And I have a feeling it's going to fall into that epic feel of a story. There's going to be, places we haven't heard about, new, everything's going to be new. Sometimes when you get into epic fantasy, they make up everything. The author has to start from the ground up. Even the money is different. I have a feeling that this is what this book is going to be. It's going to fall in that epic fantasy genre. And just looking at some of the names of the characters, I anticipate myself consuming this on audiobook, because that's another reason why I love audiobooks. Sometimes when I have a book that's like high fantasy or epic fantasy, there's a lot of different names. There's a lot of unusual names for things, words for things, places sound odd. And it's great to hear how the author intended it to be said with an audiobook narrator. So definitely check out The Children of Bone and Blood. It's going to be out soon. Okay, so let's talk about the last book on this list. It's Let's Talk About Love by Claire Can. This is a young adult contemporary title, and the description is like nothing I've ever read. This title was published on January 23rd, so it is definitely a new release. It is about a young woman, Alice, who has her whole summer planned out. She wants to be having TV binges and, going to her favorite restaurants, and she wants to work at a library to pay her part of the rent. And she's all about having this fun summer. And it looks like her summer plans are dashed when she is dumped by a girlfriend who ended things when Alice confesses that she's asexual. So, she's kind of done with dating. No, thank you. And then she meets a guy, and it's like a summer romance takes hold, and that's going to be interesting. I've not read a book like this before. And the cover art's gorgeous. I mean, I am really all in. I'm curious to see how this goes. And so far, the ratings have been pretty good. And this definitely is something that's caught my attention, especially because I love to have some diversity in my reading, not only diversity in color, but diversity in sexuality. I like to read all types of stories, including LGBT stories. So I will definitely be checking out Let's Talk About Love by Claire Can, and I hope that you do too. All right, everyone. So that's all I've got for you today. I hope you enjoyed the list, and I hope you're able to add 1 or 2 fabulous books by Black authors to your TBR list. If you've already read 1 or 2 of these titles or more, let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts on them. Go ahead and find me on Twitter and let me know what books you've read and if you enjoyed them. Or even tweet at me and let me know which books you're going to be reading, which books you will add to your TBR list. I'd love to do that because I love books. I love sharing books, and I love convincing people to read amazing books. So it's win-win all around. So that's it. Again, everyone, thank you so much for spending your time with me today. Thank you for streaming and downloading, and I hope to see you next time on Book Chat. Until then, happy reading. Take care, guys. If you enjoyed today's Book Chat episode and would like to show your support, there are a few things you can do. Head on over to Apple Podcast and leave a positive 5-star review. You can follow me on Twitter at Shelf Addiction. Most importantly, you can share this podcast with friends and family that enjoy all things bookish, including author interviews. Thank you for listening, and until next time, happy reading.